evening. Happy Valentine's Day. So if you do anything for it, I hope that it's working out brilliantly for you. And if not, I hope wherever you are that you're just content. And I think that I've talked about this with some of my friends and so forth about really this day. It's just one of those days where ideally you want to be loved all throughout the year and not distress about if you get roses or candy or any of that stereotypical type stuff. Like even if you're single, if you're happy with where you are in life and where you are and for all your blessings, everything you're grateful for, that counts. Like we have to love ourselves before we can love anybody else. So, and if not, because none of us fully love everything about ourselves, that's okay too, because you're not alone in that, So I think in short, my day was good. Spent it with Tim. We got some sushi for lunch. Then we got the kids Valentine presents from Walmart before they came home from school. Each year we usually get each kid a little stuffed animal and some candy. I didn't get them balloons this year, even though I generally do that. And then Tim treated me and the kids by getting us tickets to see Wicked in April. Like I'm such a fan of that book and Elphaba, like I have been for many years now. And I've always wanted to see the musical. And I just never really brought it up because I didn't think that my hubby, who's on here, and my kids would be into it. But they all looked at the trailer on YouTube for Wicked, and my kids are like, sure, we'll go. So I'm really excited to see something like that with them. Because, yeah, like I think it's just going to like blow my mind to go see that because I generally don't reread books, and I read that book twice because I love the story and the character of Elphaba. I'm getting tongue-tied tonight. So last night we had discussed the 6 of Cups, and I'm holding it up to allude to it because now we're moving into the 7. Hi, Jen. I see you're on here. Good evening. And so tonight we're discussing the 7 of Cups. And the reason I wanted to make sure that I did briefly hold up that 6 of Cups, and of course I won't go into everything again. Oh, hi, Christy. Good evening. I'm glad you're here. It's like with this cup, we were talking about that childlike innocence and wonder, taking a break from adulting, right? That's why the back is turned of the adult toward those children. And it's kindness, compassion, that type of thing. And, kids are very, they believe in magic. They have very good imaginations. They ask really great, profound questions in simple formats. So that was our last state that we left off of. And now we're moving into the 7. And I think it's important to briefly revisit that card because it does impact what we're seeing with the narrative along the Suit of Cups. So what we have here is the Roman numeral for 7. And we have this character whose back is facing us. Or not, yeah. So we can't even see the front side of this person. And all that we're seeing are cups filled with different things and then these clouds. And so the clouds stand for our thought processes and dreams. So for this individual, there's a lot of reality mixed in with things that are not reality. So this would be like, think of a person in your life who's a dreamer, who no matter what life throws at them, they have these big, lofty goals, and they're all about going for them. And it's like, even if they don't really plan it to execute it very well, they're very much those dreamers. Well, that's what this is. So when this card comes up, it does not mean that a decision needs to be made. If anything, it means that somebody is very emotionally overwhelmed. So again, when we're talking about tarot, we generally are talking about relationships, career, finances. Now, this card shows the importance of not having people try to rush or push you into making a decision until you know all about what each cup holds, to kind of differentiate what is real, what is not real, what are realistic expectations versus what are not realistic expectations. So I did some research on what each of the cups stand for. And of course, cups mean emotion. So with this one, we have a human head, which stands for someone's companion. So that's companionship, say like somebody's significant other. Another thing I read referenced it as the face of God. And then the shrouded figure is more of a mystery, to where clarification is needed as to who or what this entity is. Hi, Honor. You're so welcome. I'm glad you're here. And then there's the snake, which, you know, I'm always talking to you guys about how snakes stand for the shedding of the skin and change. But in this card, on my research of this, it stands for, like, think of biblical references. It stands for that snake that tempted Eve. So it's exotic. It offers knowledge. Well, let's see. I think I wrote down a couple other keywords for the snake. Wisdom, knowledge, temptation, desire. So I thought that was interesting. The tower. So, you know, when we study the major arcana, what comes into our heads when we're thinking about tower moments, right? But this is not a tower that's set on fire or anything like that. And what it stands for this card would be authority, power, adventure. So that's what that cup holds. Now, to me, this always looked a little bit like an ice cream sundae, like the sprinkles. But it's not. That's treasure. So all these would be various gems and jewels. And so when you think about that, you think of like pirates, like their booty, which would be all the treasures, money, wealth, abundance. And then the wreath stands for victory, status, high standing, being known and acknowledged by people. And then the dragon. So when I think of dragons, I always think of these mythical, beautiful creatures. Like, to me, they're right on up there with unicorns. For this card, though, the dragon actually stands for evil, chaos, disruption. I'm like, what? Like, I never looked at the dragon and associated with the dragon with all these things. You would think, especially with the many biblical references that are in tarot, it would be this guy here that would be associated with it, with the Garden of Eden and all that, but not with this card. It's the dragon. I'm like, oh my gosh. So I thought that was cool to share. And so the thing is there's a lot of emotional overwhelm, a lot of what's real and what's not, because again, this is more like a dream fantasy type state. So say if someone gets this in a reading, and a common thing that people ask about when you do readings for them is like it's a real tricky thing when they want to know about relationships, because the way I look at it, I will read regarding what I see as far as their realm of control with a relationship. It kind of goes into like, you really got to be careful when you're reading for other people and they're inquiring about relationships with other people. Because I like, when I do tarot readings, I always like to frame it in regard to somebody's locus or control over their own lives and what they can do, and their self-love and how they take care of themselves and how they treat others, and what this card could mean. This one, though, actually means, if they were to ask me, well, say of my girlfriend or boyfriend, are they serious about me? It's actually not a good indicator. So this means that there could be some infidelity. You'd have to look at the other cards that's around it. They're playing the field and they're checking out their options. Or it could be they're really on the fence. They don't know, if they want to commit, because this is not a card for commitment. Now, if it was to be in reverse, It means okay, you need to have already done your legwork and homework to look and analyze into all these various things and make a decision. But when it's upright, you do not make a decision because we're not even sure what all we're looking at. And I really feel like it kind of really hits home about if the expectations we have for ourselves and our lives are really well rooted in reality, or if it's just the way that we see ourselves, like, is it really realistic? Is this attainable? Or is it like, I don't know, like embellishment maybe, for lack of a better descriptor. So I took quite a bit of notes, so I'm going to go over those. So what we're seeing here, all the cups stand for opportunities, many different choices that could be made, and a lot of confusion. And again, you got to find out about each path with no rush. And then feel free to chime in, by the way. I mean, Facebook Lives are a trip, but I'll kind of look out for y'all's comments as I'm reading this stuff. And so again, it's very much differentiating between the real versus what is not real, being lost in a fantasy and overcome by very great, powerful emotion. Because again, cups are all about emotion. There's feelings of lust, love, excitement, very much the dreamer stereotype. And so it's really important that this individual gain some objectivity and ground themselves. Because have you ever heard of that saying that someone's head is lost in the clouds, or it's in the clouds? Well, that's where this figure is. This figure isn't very well, they're not grounded, they're not being objective, they don't know about everything in all these cups, and they might feel like they need to commit and make a decision, but it would be unwise to do so. And so let's see here. So I had mentioned if it's reversed, there would be the need to make a decision, okay, at that point in time. Clouds do represent the dreams and thoughts that we have. And so I'll go ahead and I'll review the other like symbols to make sure I reviewed everything I wrote down for them. So I had mentioned the human head is seen as a companion for the seeker. The shrouded figure stands for mystery and a need for illumination. The snake stands for wisdom, knowledge, temptation, and desire. The tower stands for stability and power, adventure. The treasure stands for abundance and wealth. And the wreath stands for victory and status. Oh, I didn't mention the skull on the cup actually warns us of vanity and pride. So there's a skull in that cup, and that's what that stands for. So I was like, wow, that's really cool. And then the dragon stands for the supernatural, evil, envy, anger, calamity, and fear. I'm like, but again, I'm all about us being intuitive readers. So just because my research defines this card as such, that's cool and all, and we're aware of these base meanings. I put more stock into what we feel, how we interpret the images we see. And the beauty in that is it's going to differ per person. We're not all meant to see the world the same. And how boring would it be if we did, And so other meanings for this card would be a fear of making the wrong choice. Again, very emotionally overwhelmed. Not being pressured by others to make decisions. Unrealistic expectations. Again, very much the dreamer. It can hint to a superficial relationship. So it's not a good card for that. The same thing for careers. Does somebody have a good feel for what they're wanting to do for their career? They need to, eventually once it's reversed, they need to make a decision after doing more research. But while it's upright, they shouldn't commit. They need to figure out what they want to do. Or if they're in a good career, like their chosen field, do they have realistic expectations or not? Same thing with their finances. Are they doing the legwork to be financially responsible and meet the needs of their family and their lives and all that good stuff? or are they frivolously like spending, especially if it makes them feel good. Then, that retail therapy, and then it bites them in the butt. Again, do they have a plan? Do they know what they're doing? Or do they have these fancy ideas with no plan on how to execute them? So there's issues with committing. And again, the emotional overwhelm. That's like the predominant theme for that card. So I thought that was really cool, because anytime I've pulled this card up in readings, I automatically would defer to like, wow, there's a lot of things to consider before a decision is made. I've never taken the time to research what each of these mean. And I thought that was really cool to do so, And so now we'll go into our other cards. This one, I think the artist did a really good job. And it shows this lady, and she is not, like her feet are not even on the ground. And in tarot, when somebody's feet are firmly on the ground, we're looking at more objectivity, which is missing from this card. We don't have that. We've got fantasy in this card, right? We don't even know what's real versus, what's not real. And her head is in the clouds, and you can make out all these things, all these different things going on in the clouds. She's very much in her head in a dream state, and it's showing those 7 cups and they're upright. So those are like all the various like choices that this person can make. But again, they are not grounded. They don't have all the data. They're lost in their emotion and their embellishment and their fantasies. They're not in a good place to make a decision. Now, Alice, I like this card. So she's looking, it's kind of like the Narnia vibes. You guys remember the story about Narnia and the magical closet, and the kids would go through the closet to go to Narnia. What was it? The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. I remember reading that for school, and that was forever ago. But you see how there's different doors that Alice could take, and she's looking at them. So her feet are on the ground. However, look at her facial expression, and she's totally open to these experiences, but you can tell she doesn't know which door she wants to open up first. She is very much in a state of awe in this picture, and I think that's really cool when you think about it. So imagine that each of these doors could take you to a different place. So if that was you in the picture, like, which of those doors would you open up and why? Or do you think you would look at them and be hesitant because you wouldn't have all the info about them? Is it a safe place? Is there somebody that's on the other side of that door that could do harm to you? Or is this going to be a cool place? It's going to be a lot of fun. And then also, how would we get back? So again, even though she's excited and her mind is probably already jumping ahead thinking, okay, cool, I'm totally wanting to try out one of these doors. Again, with that childlike wonder and that imagination running and that embellishment, she is not in a good place to make a decision without all that info. Hi, Tanil. Good evening. I'm glad you're here. So here's another one where we have this gentleman, and so we totally got the ocean behind him, and then we've got water coming out of this cup. So again, I thought that the artist did a really good job of showing that emotional overwhelm with this card. And so of course this gentleman is looking, you can tell he's in a deeply thoughtful state. He's wearing blue, so he's in search of truth, okay? However, he's very much caught in his head. He's not in a good place to find the truth because he's so caught up and lost in his head, in fantasy, unrealistic expectations. And so we see some common symbols like that snake. It looks like we've got a bat wing here. There's a ladder here. And it's like you could tell he's wanting to choose one of them, but he's uncertain with the way that he's got his hand up to his face like he's in deep thought. He really should not be making a decision until he researches each one of these in an objective fashion prior to committing. But I love that. It shows that emotional state is so in play and that it's like behind him too. So it's in front of him. Things are vague with these clouds. So that would be our dreams, our thought processes, and then an ocean behind him. So again, this is not a good card for making a decision. Then with this one, we have the crow, and we have the various things in the cups, and we have the cloud cover. So we have those symbols that are in common. And see, we've got the snake and the tower. There's a skull instead of a human head. They've got a skull, so I'm sure that alludes to companionship. Then the heart. There's that wreath again. But there's no skull drawn into that card like it is with this one. And I really thought that was cool how that skull stands for vanity and ego. That could lead to somebody's downfall, but how it's kind of like you could easily miss that skull if you weren't looking for it. And so when I was researching all these symbols, I'm like, that's so cool, because I don't think I've noticed that skull in that cup before. And then, you know, I always finish things up with a card not based in Rider-Waite-Smith, and why I'm always such an advocate when people are learning to get a deck with roots in the Rider-Waite-Smith. And so we have this one, and she looks like she's just really exhausted or sleeping, and she's on this horse. But see, this whole thing doesn't make sense. It's almost like this horse is dead, and there's armor, and then there's a snake, okay? And then as far as the legs here, I'm seeing like right here, I see the front legs, I see her leg. And as far as back here, I'm not seeing any hind legs. And then there's like this bird that's like right here. So to me, that would be the only semblance to the Rider-Waite-Smith or the other cards that are based in Rider-Waite-Smith that I see, is that it's very unreal looking, unnatural. More than likely, she's asleep and she's dreaming. You know, and at the same time feeling very vulnerable. She's not really wearing much in the way of garments. So feeling very exposed in this dream. And probably not able to tell heads or tails what she's looking at. So I thought that was really cool. And so we're making our way through the cups. And, you know, with each suit, it goes from ace, which is the equivalent of 1, all the way to 10. So by the end of the week, we're going to be done with cups. And so what I think I'm going to do is I'll do the court card on Saturday. We'll go ahead and we'll start with the page of cups. Then, you know, I don't teach on Sundays due to the group readings. Then we'll pick right up with the court cards for the cups early next week. And I'll organize them on YouTube too, to where, so there is the major arcana, then the minor arcana, okay, with the cups. I'm going to make a different playlist for the court cards. And again, that's for ease and convenience. That way, if you miss the go live, or say if there's somebody that's not on Facebook, they really don't want to be part of the group, they want to learn tarot, this is a very convenient resource. They could hop on and learn about like what I have found on my research about what these symbols mean in the cards, and kind of go from there, you know, and get different insights. Like, so our group I love because we have so many people in it. Like, it's really cool. So I love it when you guys give me what your insights about the cards and what you see. Because I also, like, I look at it like, oh, wow, I didn't see it from that perspective. And to me, it adds to that diversity and beauty that is tarot. There's no one right answer. Again, it's based on perspective and what you see. And then, of course, the cards around it when you do your spreads. So then tomorrow I'll hop on at the same time, and I'll do the 8 of Cups tomorrow. And I think what I'll do too is tomorrow afternoon, I'll post in our group an oracle card. I'll draw us a little oracle card just because we're halfway through the week at that point. And then I'm sure you've seen it in the group. Feel free to come visit with me on Thursday. I'll be with Miss Sharon Blue and Kyle, and that will be at the Grand Slam from 5 to 10. And I think that's the gist of it. Feel free to leave comments or like for this video or in the Crow's Nest, our chat group, if you want to talk about anything that we've learned so far, like get the group perspectives on it, because it's ideally what I'm hoping to see, other than, of course, us checking in with each other. But I love our group and I value you guys. So thanks again for coming and hanging out with me tonight. And I hope that you guys have an awesome evening wherever you are. And I'll see you later. Good night.